Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
So, Angus, I thought that we could kind of debrief what happened with us on Monday because I thought it would be helpful and educational. Does
Uh,
that make
well,
sense?
What
We
happened
just
with us on Monday?
we were both in kind of a low mood, and there was a short period of time where there was not such great feeling between us.
When you were annoying.
Yes, in your mind, and that's the perfect way to start because it's we all have our own personal experience of reality, and in your experience I was annoying.
You were.
And in my experience I didn't realize that, but I wanted to
Was
just
I not annoying in your experience?
well, I wanted to start off with what I think is a really great example of how different personal realities can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the areas where we tend to be very different in our personal realities is regarding health and how we take care of ourselves.
But that wasn't anything to do with what was going on Monday morning, though, was it?
No, but I
Okay. Oh,
think
this
it's
is
just a
just
good
an aside.
example. It's an
Okay.
aside. It's an
Okay.
aside. So I can't. This was a few weeks ago where we were both felt run down and that like we were kind of fighting a bug, and it didn't just feel like a cold, but it was kind of impacting our stomachs too. Do you remember that?
Yes.
So when that happens to me, my natural inclination is to, stop eating, have clear liquids, start taking some extra vitamin C, take some immune boost
Do you mean you
tinctures.
ingest clear liquids? You don't pass clear liquids.
Oh, did I say?
No, you did. You said I need clear liquids. I don't know how
Okay.
you said it. Just wanted to make that clarification.
Yes. Broth, soup.
Broth. Okay.
And I was so incredulous because you basically described having exactly the same symptoms as me.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my own sort of health protocol when that happens. And the way you decided to take care of yourself, your remedy for an upset stomach was to eat a fried egg and cheese sandwich.
I think actually I felt better after
You
it.
felt better. That was so crazy. I'm like, are you crazy?
Yeah,
what are you doing? You shouldn't eat that.
My body needed sustenance.
And then you ate that and you said, I feel fine. So to me, it's just a great example of separate realities and how your personal reality can be so different than mine.
Yeah, I was just following my wisdom. My wisdom said, fried egg and cheese. That'll sort you out.
And it did.
It did.
Anyway.
Not that I'm endorsing that as a curative for flu or cold.
I was just like, how is that even possible? That would make you feel better. Or that you felt better after eating that.
Well, because my body needed sustenance, and that was probably part of the reason why I felt, my immune system was feeling challenged because I was feeling weakened. I needed protein and carbs.
And cheese. Anyway.
A little bit of fat to make it more palatable.
So very different realities, right?
Yes,
very
yes.
different realities around what to do when you've got an upset stomach. And it worked. Right. I was humbled. It worked. And so this Monday, I think we were both a little tired after the weekend. We've been working all weekend. And I don't really remember the details. I don't think we need to necessarily get into the details. So I'll kind of talk bigger picture. But I said something to you that you experienced as annoying or irritating. You experienced me as being stern. So I didn't even realize that I was communicating in a way that was not sort of a nice, loving tone. And so I said whatever I said. And this is what has tends to happen or has happened for, throughout the time we've been together, is that I won't even be aware that I'm in a low mood, and I'll communicate with you in a way that is, not my typical normal self. And then your sensitivity, you take it personally, and then you kind of flare up. And so you come back at me with a slightly more escalated version of whatever I had been doing to you. And so that happened on Monday. And what was really interesting is I didn't realize that I was being that way. You responded to me in kind of an escalated version. And I felt this rush of emotion inside. I felt really hurt. And typically what happened early in our relationship is from that place of hurt, because I didn't realize that I was being that way. It felt in the moment when I took what you said personally, it felt unfair. Typically what I would have done is I would have come back to you and responded. But what I realized as I was thinking about it this morning is that what you said to me, it was almost like it was going through, I think they use this at the UN, I could be completely wrong, where when people are speaking a certain language, it then goes through headphones and they hear it in their language.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yeah.
So it's almost like you were saying whatever you were saying to me, and it was going through this process of interpretation. And what I was hearing in my mind was not what you were saying, but it was, you did something wrong, you're bad, you're not good enough, you're not lovable. Like, that's what I was hearing. You weren't saying any of that, but that's how I was hearing what you were saying.
Should look for a new interpreter.
I should. I've got a bad one. So that's where that feeling of hurt came from, was not what you were saying. It was what I was hearing in my own mind, which is really my self-judgments against myself. And that rush of feeling came from that. And in the past, I would have responded to you as if you had said those things to me.
Right.
And my response would have been completely justified in my mind because it would have been accurate based on what I was hearing.
Right.
But what happened this Monday was and again, I want to really emphasize, this is not like I wasn't doing a process. I wasn't doing a technique. It just made sense to me in the moment to just be with the feelings that I was having. I didn't think, oh, I'm taking Angus personally. I didn't think I shouldn't respond. It just made sense in the moment for me to just stop and be with whatever was present. And I kind of knew that it was going to pass. There was a knowing that, you know, this intense feeling isn't going to last forever. There isn't anything I really need to do about it. And nothing good is going to come if I take action in this moment. And so in that stillness, it was just like I was just able to be with myself and you know, did whatever I was doing. And then I just settled down. And so in a short period of time, not very long, I went from having this intensity to then all of a sudden coming back to normal. And then I think I said to you, are you still mad? And you're like, yes. And because I was settled in that moment, I didn't have the interpreter saying, you're bad, it's your fault. Like, I didn't have any of that going on. I'm just like, oh, he's still upset. And then you started to kind of go into your story of like how I never talk about my anger and how I portray you as having anger in our relationship, but I never take responsibility for my anger, and I make you out to be the bad cop when really I'm, you know, you just went into this litany. And inside of myself, I was just like, oh, he's still unstable. And I think I said to you, this is a time when you would tell me not to listen to what you're saying and not to take it seriously. And so then we just dropped it. And then within a very short period of time, you were back to your normal self, and we were able to kind of get on with our day. But for me, it's such a practical example of how we get caught up in our personal reality that we create, that comes from inside of ourselves, that is the story that we make up. We have an emotional experience based on that story we create. And if we can see it for what it is, then we can just kind of not react to that. And life is a whole lot simpler as we go through it, versus the old way would have been escalation upon escalation, me reacting not to what you're saying, but reacting to what my interpretation is, you doing the same thing, I'm sure, on your end, and then just this kind of blow up where the goodwill, even though the love is there, the hurt from what's said, what's done, it takes time to kind of settle from, rather than it being like just a little blip. It becomes like a big ordeal to sort of get over those hurt feelings and come back from it.
Yeah, the old pattern of play would have been like a tennis match with two pros in the midst of a rally, waiting for that point of vulnerability where they can like put a forearm smash into it and make their point. I think it was usually you that managed to get to that place quicker than I did.
What, making the smash?
Making the smash, I think so. But also, I love the analogy of the interpreter, because it kind of like makes me think, in a sense, it's kind of like I may have two interpreters at my disposal at any given point. I have my higher self, and then I have my egoic lower self who's reacting to the situation. And it's almost like, I think now, knowing what I know, when I get into those moments, you know, obviously there's a blind spot period where I'm just completely probably lost the plot and I'm in a place of rage. But usually I come back down to earth and I just start to see and observe how I'm kind of showing up, which is, I feel like I got to that point on Monday. I mean, you got to it quicker than I did. Maybe you're already there. I don't know. But I remember thinking, you know, I will come back down to earth. And I think it was at the point where you asked me if I'm still mad. That kind of like, there was a bit of an adjustment, an internal adjustment went down at that point. And then I started to settle, but we haven't really given the context, and I won't give the context of why this all kind of blew up in the first place. But part of it was that we were both so tired, and then you reminded that I had made a commitment to complete a project.
Oh, that's right. I remember now.
Which kind of took me by surprise, because I'd really I'd earmarked a few hours of Monday morning just to completely chill and recharge my batteries, and then all of a sudden, like, oh no, that's not on. That's off the table now. So I was already, that's kind of like, that was the genesis point for my low mood. So I was in a really low mood, and I pressed play on that old software, that old Oculus glasses virtual reality of darkness and despair in terms of our relationship. That's a very, easy play for me when I'm in that state of mind. And then I started to sort of, start to slowly come back into sort of some semblance of equanimity. But what really happened was that ultimately my mood radically changed when I suddenly realized that the project that I thought needed to be addressed and changed, it was like there was no need to change it. It was actually perfect as it was. And then my mood was like, great, I have my morning back. And so I share this because it just proved to me in that moment, like, oh, and then I kind of like, it's like my optics, as far as you were concerned, completely shifted. And I think I remember turning to you kind of in a good humored way. I said, I'm in a good mood now. But it just demonstrates to me how it's all about state of mind. Like in my poor state of mind, you looked awful to me.
Yes.
But almost with a flick of the switch, when my state of mind comes back into well-being, all of a sudden you're my beautiful, lovely wife, and that's just, I know I've kind of thought about that experience a couple of times, and I actually maybe shared it with some clients about, because it is all about state of mind in relationship. The state of mind is just, that's what influences our thinking, and if we can mistrust our thinking when we're in a low state of mind, then we're in a really good place.
Yeah, and recognizing that state of mind is what changes. It's not fixed. And I think that's what we forget when we see, like when you were seeing me as your horrible wife or whatever you were seeing me, or as I was seeing you as this mean husband, like that's a temporary view of you that is not fixed. And it changes quite rapidly when we realize that we don't need to take it seriously. We don't need to buy into it. It's not the truth. It's a temporary floating experience that's going to come and go. And it's also not something that needs to be fixed or changed. We don't need to do anything about our state of mind. The innate well-being inside of us is what has our resilience, and our mind just kind of switches back, and we can then put all of that noise back into the background and experience more of who we are beyond that in the foreground. And the love that we experience, whether it's in a personal relationship, a professional relationship, just that love is not coming from the other person. It is who we are inside. And we just get caught up in identifying with what is not that. And so we experience less of that. So for me, I got caught up in identifying with all of my story about my unworthiness, and that was what was my experience versus what's behind that, who I am. And I could have blamed that on you, but for whatever reason in that moment I had some understanding inside of me not to do that, and to just know, hey, this is going to pass, and there's nothing to resist, there's nothing to change. You didn't need to change. You didn't need to, like the old way would have been me to say, you can't do that, you can't treat me this way, you need to learn how to be different. Like all of that blame would have come from my simple misunderstanding that you were responsible for how I was feeling. And then all of the damage that would have been done to rapport because I would have got judgmental and criticized you, and then you would have bought into your story potentially. And so for people just to see the simplicity of letting experience move through you and allowing it to come and go, and recognizing your innate resilience and capacity to re-experience who you truly are, that's all that's going on. And that is natural. You don't need to work at that. That is your natural state. And you get to sort of just play with this and see how this game works, and how as part of everyday life, we get caught up in identifying with what is not true, who we aren't, and then we get uncaught up naturally. That's just how it works.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. It's almost like, for me, I think of it in terms of having some sort of internal barometer that I can start to become more observant of. And that I also have an emotional thermostat, which is kind of set to auto in a very strange way, that based on my state of mind will send all this, these weather systems that really I don't have to take personally. I just really, ideally, I just get to observe, and ideally, more so ideally, that I get to, have this barometer, which I can see those weather patterns before they come in. And that's a hard ask, because more often than not I'll hit a blind spot. But I do feel like I'm becoming better equipped to notice when I'm getting out of whack.
Yeah, it's never personal, even though we take it personally over and over again. And why I wanted to share this story is because I think it was just a great example of how this is not about perfection. This is not about being enlightened. Just a little bit of recognizing this can go a long way to having a much more graceful, loving, kind experience within yourself and between each other. And so this is very doable. Basically, what I'm saying is, if Angus and I can do this, anybody can do this. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, enjoy your weekend. Have a lovely time. Sending you lots of love.
Bye.
Bye.